Welcome to another episode of Full Rules. Today I was joined with Alex Ecklin. Alex is the head coach and owner of Master Skya Jiu-Jitsu out of New York City. Master Skya is the head of a few different affiliates all over the world, one of which I'm a part of at Firehouse Jiu-Jitsu up here in the Catskills. This is a great conversation. Alex is just a super humble dude, just the embodiment of a martial artist, and I think you're going to get a lot of this conversation. So without any further ado, let's get it. All right, Alex, welcome to the show.
Adam, thank you for having
You
me.
got it, man. Thanks for making the time. Before we jump in, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your origin story, as it were.
My name is Alex Ecklin, and I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I've been doing jiu-jitsu since 2006, and I currently run Master Skya in New York City. And yeah, that's about it.
Cool. Where in Brooklyn you from?
I grew up like in Ditmas Park, Flatbush area.
Yeah, yeah. All right, cool. Fellow New Yorker. I feel like
Yeah.
there's not too many of us left out there. It's just like everyone's from someplace
Well,
else.
we lost you, so
Yeah, yeah,
gotta hold it down.
yeah, exactly. Um, how did you find jujitsu?
It's kind of like a bunch of things blended together. I did martial arts as a kid, and then when I was a teenager, I didn't really have much going for me, and I was like really out of shape. I got into an accident where I broke my back. And I was just home all day. And then, I got onto like online forums. I got onto bodybuilding.com
Hmm.
and I started to, work out. I got like some friends that I started talking to online. And then we would always talk about martial arts and I would always watch UFC. And, I felt like the need to do something like that again. And, while working out, I decided to, give jujitsu a try. And the rest is history.
Nice. Um, we actually met before we actually met. I remember I was training a client at the Harvard Club, and you were
Yeah.
training a client at the Harvard Club, and like I think I had like a Marcelo shirt on. I think you had probably like a Master
Yeah.
Sky shirt on, and we saw the
Yeah.
ears, and that's like the universal sign. I'm like, oh, this guy trains, but we didn't actually get to talk
Yeah.
until years later. If you had to distill jujitsu down to its like base elements, like its core, what would you say that was?
The core of jujitsu.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a grappling art, that's positional based, where you're trying to isolate someone's joint or neck and using your own body to give them no other options of movement, forcing them to submit.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, you're the head coach and owner of Master Skya.
Hmm.
So the question we get asked a lot, so I'm at Firehouse Jiu-Jitsu, which is a Master Skya affiliate, and the question we get asked a lot is what does Master Skya mean? I know what it
Yeah.
means, but I want to hear it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah. So contrary to popular belief, it's not my last name and it has nothing to do with, being called master. It's a Russian word. It means workshop in Russian. My native tongue is Russian. I was born in Ukraine. And I just thought it was like a pretty clever word. A good friend of mine, Ivor, he started the gym with me, and he has an affinity for the Russian language as well. And him and I we came up with this word together
Nice. Why workshop?
because I feel like it's jujitsu and my gym and a lot of other gyms. It's kind of like a laboratory. It's just, something that we're building. A lot of software engineers, for example, they practice jujitsu, and I feel like the reason is it's they have a connection of building something and expanding on something. So I think it's the perfect word.
Yeah. Yeah. Hell yeah. And I'll just give a little the elegance of like just the type and everything, and the fact that it's a very thought provoking uh logo. I love that kind of stuff. I like kind of understated, simple, elegant stuff that kind of like if you're familiar with the clothing brand Jiu-Jitsu, like they have like that script, and it like people will ask me like what is that? And I get the same stuff from Master Sky. Like they're like, "Oh, what is that? What does that mean?" And it's like anything that kind of provokes thought and provokes questions, I think is just a really great kind of overall brand, and the fact that it goes much deeper than that I think is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, what is a trend in jujitsu right now that you wish would pass?
That I wish would pass. When you and I started jujitsu, I think it was tap out. Uh, These days, I don't know. I think things are going pretty well. Do you have any examples of things that
Oh man, I don't know. I think I guess one thing is the whole kind of gi versus no gi uh
Mhm.
controversy, or whatever, just like these camps where people kind of fall in. I do mostly no gi now because that's just
Yeah.
kind of where I train. I have excuse me, put the jacket back on, and I'm doing one gi class a week, and would like to bump that up a little bit. Um, and that's really not because of any particular reason. I just enjoy doing no gi, and that's kind of where I wanted to spend a lot of my focus the last little while. But when people kind of fall into these camps, and like have this like dumb beef with one another, I think is just such a silly argument. I mean, it's all jujitsu, right?
Yeah.
It's all good. It's like I just don't, you know, I don't know, and I don't see that really changing anytime soon. I feel like that's probably going to be kind of trending in like opposite directions for a little while. What's your take on all that?
Yeah, I agree completely with you, and like, you come from a Muay Thai and kickboxing background, and um I look at jujitsu kind of similarly now, like 10, 15 years ago when I was learning jujitsu. I mean, I'm still learning it, but 10, 15 years ago, uh no gi was kind of like gi without the controls of the lapels and the sleeves, right? And people just modify, instead of grabbing the sleeve, you grab the wrist. But today, gi and no gi, it's two different sports.
Yeah,
So the same way that I think it's silly to say, oh, no, I do, kickboxing and I don't do Muay Thai or vice versa.
yeah,
I think it's kind of same story, and striking is striking, and if you want to specialize in kickboxing where there's no clinch, that's great. And if you want to, do traditional Muay Thai, that's great too. And quite a few fighters like in Glory, they cross over. They fight in each.
hmm,
So I think the same thing is for jujitsu, and I think more gyms should differentiate also between the two arts. Not blended together so much. So I think that's pretty much it.
yeah. So so you think that like the specialization, um, like people should kind of hyper specialize in one or the other?
Yeah.
Oh wow,
They can, or they can hold. I know there's different gyms that have like a Muay Thai coach and have a kickboxing coach,
yeah,
kind of really differentiate. To show that it's two different arts. But have people do both if they want to.
yeah, yeah. Because I think like when you and I came up, um, at least where I trained, it was pretty much like 50-50. Like I would typically do, back to back classes. Like when I was at Marcelo's, for example, each day was like gi, no gi, and it was like stacked like that. And so I would just do 2 hours of, and I pretty much, my training was split 50-50 down the middle. In the very beginning, I did mostly gi, and then I kind of did 50-50, and now I'm doing mostly no gi, getting back into the gi. Um, but I totally agree. It's two different arts. I feel, um, putting the gi back on, like having not grabbed a lapel in like a year and a half, like my forearms like exploded. Like I couldn't like open
Yeah,
my fist, and I was like, oh wow. I
yeah,
was like, I have not been doing this in a while.
yeah.
Um, what do you think is the most important thing for a new student to focus on?
I think so many things, right? So you know, I don't know if it's the best way or the right way, but when I did my first class, um, I think what drew me in was that I saw the authenticity of jujitsu. Like I remember like coming in, and I watched a lot of MMA, and I was working out, and I was like, no, I'm gonna do this. Like my mind was already made up pretty much, before the first day. But when I walked in, the coach, his name was Gene Dunn. He had me spar on the very first day, and I remember I had to like his gym was on the ground level, and I overexerted myself so much that I had to run out and like throw up, and I was like, this is terrible, but this is, amazing, and give me a big respect for what jujitsu was. And that's what also kept me coming back. And so my students, I like everybody to spar from the very first day.
Mhm.
So I think, same as like if you and I were learning a new language, I tried learning many languages and I always failed. And partly it's because I don't know, I just studied from a textbook or studied from a person or from a video, and I never really got forced to practice it. So I like to do that for people in jiu-jitsu. I like them to force them in a way to practice sparring. So because of that, I think the most important thing is, to stay relaxed, to know your own body, not to go too fast, to try to, utilize two or three things that they learn on their first day, and just looking at movement as opposed to like, okay, I'm going to get an armbar or something like that.
Yeah.
And then once they kind of, move around a little bit and have, somebody with a little more experience guide them, then they can start to, learn moves and utilize, more of the concepts that we go over. But I think just, that's the first thing that's going to get the person to keep coming back. And I think that's going to be the most important, as opposed to just, specific technique or specific, anything too specific.
Yeah. You do a little Muay Thai as well, right?
Yeah. So, I had one MMA fight. I had, I think, like five Muay Thai fights. So yeah, I fell in love, became my second love. I went to Thailand for a few months just to train Muay Thai.
I didn't know you had 5 fights.
I think four or five I had. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, technically, I think a couple of them were like glory rules. One of them was like Muay Thai. It was like a
Yeah.
little all over the place. Yeah,
Yeah, well, it's like you said before, it's like that switch back and forth. I got,
yeah,
2 teammates right now where I train. One of them was getting ready for a Muay Thai fight. His opponent pulled out, so they found him a kickboxing fight. And it's like, okay, whatever. It's just like you switch back and forth. And there are some nuanced differences, but at the end of the day, like, it's all striking and they can kind of transition from one to the other. Um, so just keeping it with the kind of striking versus grappling experience, I've found that because of that experience that we get in jujitsu, like going live from day one, my skill progressed at a much quicker rate than it did for Muay Thai. I feel like Muay Thai, like some days I just feel like I cannot string anything together. And I think I attribute a lot of that to not because you can't go live in striking all the time. It's like you would walk out of there with brain damage after like 2 years. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's like so much more traumatic. Um, what was your experience like in kind of transitioning from like, the traditional hitting the bag or hitting pads to like sparring to like fighting? Like, did you feel like, and then comparing that versus your jujitsu experience, like, did you feel like one progressed quicker than the other?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think jujitsu is in a way a faster learning curve. And I think in jujitsu you don't necessarily need to be as athletic also as kickboxing.
Hmm.
And also like Muay Thai and kickboxing, I feel like the training is a lot more how do you say the word? Like they kind of split everything up. So like there's kick sparring,
Right, right.
kick sparring, then there's boxing, then there's clinch work, and maybe one time a week or one time every couple of weeks you put everything together.
Hmm.
Whereas jujitsu, you just you go full on, and a lot of people they end up specializing in one versus the other category, and they fail quite a bit in the other compartments, right? So like they're really bad in boxing and they're really bad in clinch, but they're really good in kicking, and
Yeah.
they can just win, with that. So I think, yeah, I agree with you for sure. I think it takes, way longer to get good at it, and, as a workout, it's a lot of fun, but, I feel like, especially in America, I think a lot of people are, always, tempted to spar and, that's what they're looking for.
Yeah. Having a grappling background, like my first fight, of course I gravitate to the clinch. And the minute I was able to kind of like
Yeah.
wrap somebody up, I was like, oh, this is great. You know what I mean? And I also think like the proximity, like because we're grappling, the sensory feedback and the tactile feedback is so much greater than when you're striking, because in striking you're just going off of like visual, like what do you see, like, and that's why like
Yeah.
feints and deception are such a big part of striking. Whereas in grappling, it's kind of difficult to do that because I can feel what you're doing. It's kind of hard to like fake somebody out. Of course, in like wrestling or stand up type situations, you can kind of feint and fake. But but when I actually have connections to a partner, it's really difficult to kind of like trick me into doing something. It's certainly possible, of course, but it's way more difficult.
For sure.
All right. So what is a new student? So what do you think? Kind of tying off or tying to the previous question, what do you think is the most important thing in jiu-jitsu? And this doesn't have to be like a technical thing. It could be more like mindset, or it could be technical as well. Like, what do you think is like the most important thing for a jiu-jitsu practitioner?
I think there's so many. Like for me, it's having an open mind. I remember when I was like, blue belt, and I'm looking at deep half guard, back then deep half guard, that was the cutting edge.
Hmm.
And then there's coaches, speaking against it, and they're like, deep half guard, this is no good, this and that. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I never want to, get to that level. I never want to, become this person that has this like closed-minded way of thinking.
Hmm.
And I think jujitsu, the coolest thing about jujitsu, different from Muay Thai, different from, other sports, is that it's constantly evolving, and, things are constantly being added and taken away. And like, if you look at jujitsu, 15 years ago and today, it looks like two different sports.
Hmm.
Whereas Muay Thai, it looks, pretty much, other than Tencha and a couple others, it looks pretty much like the same,
Yeah.
same kind of flow of things. So I think, having an open mind, being open and receptive to new techniques, even new ways to train. I think this is, super, super important. Other than that, I think just, finding new ways to control a person, right? Like there's so many things that are, that can find, control somebody, but also there's a lot of things that are, I call them like the blue jeans. Like they're never going to go out of style, right?
Yeah.
Like Dagestani handcuffs, right? So, and then sometimes you show a guy that's obsessed with buggy chokes, the Dagestani handcuffs, and he'll be like, man, this is crazy. And you're like, yeah, this has been around for a couple hundred years.
Yeah.
So, kind of, blending the older than new and just, having an open mind, I think is the key.
I did a couple of posts yesterday about this is two young guys, Adler, well, actually, both of them, Shaka and Adler, and they're obsessed with
Know them very well.
yeah, they're obsessed with the buggy choke, and
Yeah.
it's like their life's ambition to like buggy choke me, and so and I get like mildly offended when they attempt to. We have this like back and forth with the buggy choke. I think it's such an important thing you bring up though, like keeping an open mind. I agree that jujitsu, for all the shade that people throw on jiu-jitsu, philosophically and conceptually, it is like light years ahead of almost every other martial art, because no other combat sport, I'm biased, of course, but I don't see that same evolution going on in other combat sports. Um, this willingness to just try new things, all the time. Like there's always something coming out. There's always like, the new meta, and then like, the counter to the new meta, and that evolves a whole new thing. And this process is just continually cycling through like this new stuff. And I just think it's a remarkable phenomenon. Um, what is the most positive impact jujitsu has had on your life personally?
Just like confidence, like, before I started, I had like nothing going for me. And then, I got to know my own body. I got to, know some, that I can do different things, by myself, that I can get out of bad situations. And, the same thing, it's very corny, but it's true. Like, it transfers over, right? So,
Mhm.
you know, there's a lot of dualities from jujitsu in life, so I think that's the biggest thing, just, you know, being a, confident member of society. As corny as that is, that's what it is.
Yeah, I think there's also like research to back a lot of that up. Like even just with like strength and conditioning, like the more you kind of apply like a stress into your life, the more resilient you become to all types of stress, like psychological stress, emotional stress. And jujitsu is just a fine example of that. It's like you go in there and, a lot of times you don't know people, or you're meeting new people, and you're getting into this like, you know, um, what your brain perceives as a confrontation, even though it's not an actual confrontation, but it's like a physical altercation. But there's like an intimacy and a closeness that evolves out of that. And, a connection that evolves with your fellow training partners. And I think that bleeds out into the rest of your life, that confidence and that stillness that we can feel post training. I think it's one of the reasons why people fall in love with jujitsu as well. It's like I just feel such a deep connection to my training partners, and because of jujitsu, I've met so many people, yourself included, that are just
Yeah.
like, have been an integral part of my life for the last like 12 years. Um, What's something besides jujitsu that you're really into that people might be surprised to learn?
I mean, I don't, so I was just, with a friend of mine. His name is Ray. We just went to this like BJJ XP trip in Colombia, this jiu-jitsu retreat,
Yeah.
which is phenomenal, by the way. And, Ray is like, such a enthusiastic and like warm and wonderful person. And like, he's this kind of person where he'll try anything, and, they had kite surfing on the camp. He signed up for kite surfing. He wants to do this, that. And then he's like, Alex, you got to try kite surfing. For 30 minutes, he was telling me how great it was. And I was like, man, I don't have any desire at all to do it, as cool as it is. So, I kind of feel like I'm very, content, and, I do a lot of jujitsu. I do a lot of things related to it, but other than that, I love art. I love to go to museums. Like I don't really, paint or draw too much myself, but, I love to observe. So I think that could be something that's surprising, but other than that, I'm not too exciting of a person.
Talk to me a little bit more about the camps. I know that's something you've been doing for a little while.
Yes, I've done 3 camps already. I've done 2 in Colombia and 1 in Lebanon. And I think what you said earlier, meeting people and connecting with people is like one of the coolest things. And yeah, like what do I, somebody that grew up in New York City, have something to do, have in common with somebody in Colombia or somebody in Lebanon and stuff like that. And it's kind of nuts because when you meet these people, you find that you do have a lot of things in common, and it's mostly through jujitsu, through mutual interests and through mutual struggles. So, I think I'm really lucky, and I think it's like really cool to be able to travel and to meet these kinds of people. And, both of the camps, they do the same thing, which is, I think amazing is, they brought me as a coach in Colombia. There's also other coaches as well. In Lebanon, I was the only coach. But they invite, people from, America or wherever, but also, they invite a lot of locals, and they also, invite a lot of locals that don't have, maybe a black belt coach or high level coach, or you don't have many opportunities to train or many opportunities to, train in like a professional environment. And, and a lot of these people are like so passionate, and a lot of these people are just like learning through videos, through Instagram and stuff like that. And, you see the passion in them, and in New York, I kind of laugh about it, but, we have all the best teams, right? Now New York has, dipped a little bit in quality, but it's still one of the best,
Mhm.
and then we have people, going from gym to gym and this and that, and, they're still terrible, uh, and they have all the resources. They go to all the seminars. They have everything, and they're just like, you meet them and then, leaves much to be desired, and then you go to some of these countries where the person is training under a blue belt, and man, these guys are like, and girls are tough as nails,
Mhm.
and they have such a fire. They have such a passion. They have great jujitsu. Like, I've been so surprised, with the quality of jujitsu in these countries. And at the same time, like I come from the city, and both of these places we were like more in the countryside. So for me, it was just like a different perspective, a change of scenery, that's huge too. Even in Colombia, like we're training at a high elevation, and then, your cardio really gets tested there too. So it's just been an amazing experience, on all fronts.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love the just that idea of like I don't know. I just think in today's world we kind of we look outside of our little box and all we see is like the differences. But like at the end of the day, it's like how different are we really, right? There's like everyone wants to be happy. Nobody wants, like discomfort and unhappiness. And we all kind of want the same things. And especially with jujitsu, it's like we're so fortunate to have this, especially like in New York, we have so many different options. And just being able to bring high level jujitsu to a place that doesn't necessarily have it must be super cool. If I could, I'm going to PT school in June. So my financial life is tied up in that, but I would love to go on one of these camps at some point just to experience that firsthand. It sounds like an amazing trip.
Yeah, man, incredible.
Yeah. You have anything coming up? Any new camps planned?
Not at this moment.
All right, keep an
Yeah,
eye out for
but
that.
both the Lebanese camp, they're gonna have another one. I'm pretty sure, and the BJJ Camp XP, they're gonna be going to Peru at the end of the year. But as of right now, it's not set yet.
What was it like? So you trained at altitude. What was it like coming back down to sea level? Did you feel that superhuman bump in your performance?
No, to be honest, no. I don't know. To be honest, I was gassed over there. I came back to America. I rolled, this week. I've been gassed this week too. So, I don't know. I can't tell you too much of a, too much of a difference.
I have a client who he's an alpine and rock climber, and so he told me this story. It might have actually been in Peru. They did this like crazy peak, and they were at altitude for however long, and they came back down, and then they said they felt so like supercharged that they ran like the equivalent of like a half marathon after like climbing all day long, and then like went to some
Right.
restaurant and ate like like 2 steaks each or something. It was like they felt like superhuman. And I've always wanted to try that.
Yeah.
Um,
You should get. You remember that mask that was trending 10 years ago?
the Boss
That I don't think
Ridden
I've.
oxygen mask.
Yeah,
Yeah, those
yeah.
things I get asked about that all the time. So the reason why those masks don't do what they claim to do is because all it's doing is restricting airflow. So oxygen is not thinner, right? Oxygen is still, you're at sea level, so that doesn't really change, but it's harder to breathe in. Now, there could be a use case for people like us, like grapplers or like MMA fighters, who have to learn to breathe through an occlusion or some type of like restriction, but it's not giving you that same like rise in red blood cell count because you're still at sea level. Those things were like all over the place for a while, and I probably got asked about that like once a week on the mats. Like people would ask me about it like all the time.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's one trend that I'm happy that went away.
yeah,
Park.
he rebranded it. I don't want to call out anybody, but it got rebranded, and
Okay.
now it's like they're calling it something different, but it's like the same exact thing. And
I see. I
they've
see. I
like
see.
added like extra to make it like even harder. So yeah,
Nice.
hopefully that's not coming back. Um, what do you think is one idea in combat sports that the majority of people get wrong?
I think just the how important like confidence is, how important psychology is. A lot of people, they're focused on, technical applications, but like going into a fight, like and being like, no, I'm gonna win this fight. And you know, being able to, improvise when things aren't going your way. I think these are all like really, really important things to, to train and to focus on as well. And I think, at high levels, this is what sets people apart. And it's something that I think is not talked about, that much.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we see these like really high performers in any sport, not even just jujitsu or combat sports, and they can come off as like arrogant sometimes, like the Michael Jordans and the Gordon Ryans or whatever. You know what I mean? Like people kind of have this Floyd Mayweather. Like you look at any sport, there's going to be like whoever's kind of sitting near the top of that sport. And that is a common trait that they all have, is just this unbridled confidence in themselves. What do you think is like the best way to go about acquiring confidence like that?
It just, it's a few things. I think first of all, being successful in training. I think it's, knowing that you put in a lot of work and a lot more work than others. Seeing improvement in yourself, and then it's also like winning and beating people that at one point were better than you.
Hmm.
And then kind of riding that wave. I think accumulation of this is what's gonna keep you going.
Yeah, Danaher talks about that too. He has this whole thing. It was on some podcast, I can't remember, and he was talking about how like he was kind of like taking a dig at like sports psychology, and how like giving motivational speeches or like telling an athlete how good they are isn't really going to go that far, but
Yep.
your technical ability and like you're talking about, um demonstrating your physical skills in a way that are superior to other people's, that is ultimately what is going to build confidence. It's like you're like, what can you actually do? And I agree with that 100%. I think kind of skills pay the bills, you know what I mean? um and that means you have to train. It means you have to like put that work in if you want to be a champion, if you want to be that successful, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of sacrifice that goes into that. It's not just you know, you wake up one day and it's just going to be handed to you. I mean, you have to sacrifice a lot in order to kind of to have that level of success.
For
Um,
sure. And I think, this, suffering has to be worth it, right? So I think that's, a big problem. And that's why a lot of athletes quit. They put in a lot of, effort, and then, they don't get the results that they want, and then they end up quitting. So, also kind of like, having a short-term memory. If you lose, keep going, like, compete again until you start winning. And if you win, like, you need to remember those wins, but, also, be humble enough to know that, they may end as well. Right. So I think it's always like a two-side street like that.
yeah, that's a really good point. Short term memory, like be confident, be happy with what you have, but also don't dwell on what you might have lost, and just keep it moving. That's really good advice.
Exactly.
Um, what's your personal proudest accomplishment?
It's funny, like, I did decent, I got, third place at the world championships at brown belt. I won American nationals, like at Masters one, I won Nogi Pans black belt. Like I've had, I fought an EBI a couple of times, but I don't know. I don't really like, I feel like a lot of people like, they tell past stories or, oh, I fought this guy, I fought that guy. I don't really reflect too much on my own career. I feel like I'm always like thinking what's next.
Hmm.
And, I'm still competing. Like I'm going to compete like maybe like once a year. Like like, I feel like, that's not like no longer a major focus of mine. And my focus is more on my students.
Hmm.
But I don't have like any like specific event, and, I don't really think about it too much.
Yeah. And that can be right there. It's like just having this great environment, like that's an accomplishment in itself. Like, how did you know? Like, what point did you pass where you were like, "This is it. Jujitsu is my life. Like, I'm gonna open up a school, and really just make this like a central part of my life."
I mean, it was when I was flunking college, so I think, I remember like, sometimes like in school, I was in, Brooklyn College, and, like I'm sitting in class, and I'm just like zoned out, and I'm just like daydreaming about jujitsu. And then like, I'm like, man, like, I don't know what this professor is talking about. And then I'm like looking at the time, and I'm like, I think I can make it to class if I leave right now. And I would pretend to go to the bathroom, and then I would just, take the train to jujitsu, and then, train. So I think, I always kind of knew. And then, my parents, were bugging me like when I graduated, they're like, all right, you need to get a job, and then I think I was like, fake applying for some, jobs that I, was quote unquote qualified for. And then, I asked Shalin, I was like, hey, you think I can just like, work here? And he goes, yeah, you can work here. And I was like, all right, I got a job, and then, I think the rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not an easy path to forge, like especially when you have like people close to you. Which I think a lot, like I certainly experienced that. Like I had a job, not a career. I had a job. I was like working as a doorman, and I was like, I think I want to get into like fitness and like strength and conditioning. And like everybody who loved me was like, that's a bad idea. Like you should like you shouldn't do that. But like having, like you said before, like the confidence and just the knowledge that like, no, you know what, like this is for me. Like I know what that's like to be able to kind of like put that aside and just follow what's in your heart. And I think more people need to do that. I was talking to a young guy yesterday, and he was just like, I really like snowboarding. I'm like, then find a way. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
go find a way. Like make snowboarding your thing. Like I think too often we get stuck, just based on like some other people's ideas and what they think we should do. And
Yeah.
I'm certainly glad you did, because like, because of you, I got a place to train up here, and you know what I mean? Like that one decision affected somebody years later that you didn't even know, you know what I mean, is going to affect them. I really value that.
Yeah, appreciate it. But also, on that topic too, Adam, I also want to say like, at the same time, like jiu-jitsu, it's like I consider like a blue collar job. So, some like I've had people that are like, hey, you think I should be a jiu-jitsu coach? And I'm like, no, like you have a great job, and you're doing jiu-jitsu as a hobby. That's a great hobby for you. Like, why do you want to work with jiu-jitsu? Why do you want to like, it's not a glamorous thing as well. A lot of people like they glamorize it and like, oh, this
Yeah.
is a dream lifestyle. And, in some ways it is, but in a lot of ways it isn't as well. So, I think, to be realistic with yourself and your skill sets is, very important too. And then for me as well, like, like my mom is a teacher, my grandma's a teacher. And, I felt like, as soon as I started teaching, I really enjoyed it. So, I got really fortunate in that respect too. But at the same time, teaching, having jujitsu as your career, teaching is actually, unfortunately, a small part of what you have to do.
Yeah. Um, Talk a little bit more about that, right? Because I have a question. What's the favorite part of your job, and what's the least favorite part of your job? So this might be a good time to ask that.
So like I think like teaching a class is like the easiest thing,
Mm,
right? Because but also when you teach a class, you don't see the results really, right? Because it takes a long time to be able to see the results, right? So, and by results I mean the improvement of students, the progress of students, and before that happens, there's so many other things. You have to be a disciplinarian, you have to be, like I have a good friend, Eric. He's a dean in City Poly, and I joke with him all the time. I'm like, the reason you and I are such good friends and we're so connected is because I'm a dean too. I'm constantly reprimanding, supervising students. I'm constantly, trying to, discipline them. Kind of guiding them to train correctly.
mhm.
Because if they don't train correctly, how are they going to get any techniques?
Yeah.
It's a lot of that. It's a lot of social dynamics, right? Like knowing you know how to make sure people keep coming back. I consider my coach's coach one of the greatest, if not the greatest, combat coaches of all time. His name is Dede. So, he runs the team Novi Nhau, and Novi Nhau produced UFC champions, produced, WC Bellator champions. He also produced IBJJF Gi black belt world champions. He produced ADCC medalists. There's kickboxers there. So this guy Dede, he produced champions across all forms of combat. And one time I asked Shellen, I was like, what makes him so great? Like, I barely hear anything about this guy. Nobody ever talks about him, but, what makes him so great? And also, just to add something else, he produced almost all of these people from scratch.
Mm,
They came from day one, like white belts, and then he, made them into champions in all these forms. And he said something that I always think about. He said that, Sean said that they always knew what to say to fighters before and after their fights,
mm.
and he would treat everybody differently. And, he knew, how to speak to people. Right. And this is such a difficult skill that you're not going to get at any webinar. You're not going to, you need to learn it on your own.
Mm.
Like I have some students who I need to like motivate. I need to like pump up. I need to like, make my energy 10 times what it is. And others, I need to, be very, practical with them. I need to be like very logical, very clear, very concise. So I have to be like different for everyone, and this is something that's really, really hard, and it's something that I'm still learning as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a skill. How to like best motivate. I have like a whole thing with motivation. Like I think sometimes we confuse motivation with inspiration. Um and it's a difficult thing. It's like trying to a big part of my job is like getting people to do stuff that they don't necessarily want to do sometimes, you know? Like they hire you because they know that they should be doing it, but like they don't really want to do it. And so it's like a tricky thing. It's like how to best. There's a whole, sub discipline of like psychology devoted just to that. Like just like how do you basically get people to do stuff that they don't want to do? And it's not easy. And especially with combat sports, it's like people like the idea of training a combat sport. They like the idea of competing and fighting. And you get in there and you get kicked in the face. It's like some people they don't want to be there anymore. It's like
Yeah.
it's like how do you kind of navigate that? It's not easy. Um, what do you what would you say is like what has been like the hardest challenge in your life? One of them,
The hardest challenge. I mean, I think life is one giant challenge, just,
the whole thing.
yeah, the whole thing. I don't have like one specific thing per se. I think, everything worth doing in a way is going to be challenging, right? So I think it's very comfortable just, to sit at home, not to take any risks.
Mm.
and I try to take calculated risks, but it's all a challenge. I have the same, even though I don't show it, I have the same doubts that every other person has. But I don't really think about it. I don't, I feel like I'm just trying to be on autopilot, and then, same as jujitsu. Like if I need to break a grip, I'll break a grip, but I don't really dwell on it. Like I'm not like, this grip, such a pain, or like, I'm about to get past. I don't have these thoughts.
Yeah.
My thoughts are more like, what am I going to keep going? What am I going to keep doing? How am I going to keep progressing? So I don't really even think about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that like tying back to like how jujitsu gives us confidence in life outside the mats, and I've definitely experienced that. Even like just this podcast, you know what I mean? Like I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, but like let's just start booking talk. Let's just start booking people, start talking to people, and like see what happens.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And it's like, if it's great, like short term memory, right? If it does well, then great. If it doesn't do well, then so what? You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. Just
exactly. Yeah.
just keep on going.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think a lot of people, I feel like they dwell on, oh, this in my life is not going well, or, oh, this happened to me. And, they keep thinking about that. But for me, I just ignore it in a way. Right.
yeah,
And I think a lot of other people say, oh, that's not good. You got to confront these things. But I'm like, I think it's great. I'm always thinking about what's next as opposed to what happened, or, what is currently, bothering me. I try to focus on what's going on, what's going well, as opposed to what, not going so well.
yeah, yeah. Mindset is everything. What do you think is like ideal culture in a gym, or like what kind of culture are you trying to build at Master Skaya?
So like when I first started jujitsu, yeah, I don't know if it's in my head. I think it's pretty accurate. It could have been also been me too, but I was like, kind of like a fat kid. I was like 180, and I was, thinking I'm a power lifter or a bodybuilder, but really in reality, I was eating, double cheeseburgers from McDonald's, and, trying to bench press as much as I could, and I was just like a weirdo. And, but I remember like coming in and like, nobody would talk to me. Right. And, but it was also partly because people were older and stuff like that. And I felt very isolated. Yeah, but I didn't really care. I was like, I'm still going to train and stuff like that, but I still remember those things. And then I remember like, I was obsessed with jujitsu, and I was, started to tap a couple of people, this and that. And then, people started to talk to me and stuff like that. And I was remember thinking like, are they, people talking to me just because I'm now getting some submissions and because like they see I'm serious? And like, I remember like, having like a feeling that this is not right. So now, like in the gym, like we have, upper belts coming in, and we have, some of my friends, that have been with me forever, but it's almost like in a way I almost ignore them. Like the people that I feel like are going to succeed, I just let them be. And I try to focus on the people that I think would quit, or the people that are like outsiders or the weirdos, which is me really.
Mm,
And, I feel like this is what kind of breaks clicks apart,
hmm.
because I think it's very easy to, have a little circle and have, the higher belts sitting and, just, sharing techniques with one another. But I try to do the opposite. And I try to like, befriend people, like, almost in a not in a forceful way, but, like, I'm like, hey, this guy has the same body type as you. Can you like, help him out? And then I try to like, be a matchmaker.
Hmm.
And, I found that this, you know, makes people, build little communities within the gym. And those communities are not like isolated, these people, they go from community to community. So I think this is really, really important. I feel like it's important for a person when they come into a gym to feel comfortable, to feel, seen, even if they're, just a complete beginner. And I think after that, it makes things fun. And if things are fun, they keep coming back. And if they keep coming back, then, they kind of have to improve. Right. So I
Yeah,
think this is, a way to build something.
that's awesome. It's kind of cliche at this point, but like when they say like the hardest belt to get is white belt, because like most people kind of like think about doing jujitsu, and how many people think about it and don't do it, versus like the people that step on the mats for the first time. Because I think there's probably an idea of like what combat sports is like if you don't have any experience with it, and you probably see MMA and you think it's going to be this kind of like super aggro kind of like bro culture, and so to come into a place where you're already feeling kind of awkward, and have somebody uh I always say like go where it's warm. You know what I mean? Like when you're looking for a
Mhm.
gym, like go where it's warm. And that's like a really great culture because I've experienced that. Like I've trained at a couple different, well known places, and the when I went to the second place that I trained, I'm not going to name any names. Nobody like spoke to me. Like I was probably like a
Yeah.
two stripe blue belt or something like that, and nobody spoke to me until I started getting like submissions. You know what I mean? And then it was like, oh, okay, hi, how are you? You know what I mean? Like I was like, I've been here for like
Yeah,
three
that's
months, dog. Like, what are you
yeah.
talking about? Um, and it's just I don't know. It's just not a good look. I think.
Yeah, I think it's also, like, important, like, even, like, what's very important in my gym is that we don't have, like, a lineup where people are lined up by rank.
Mm,
Like, I purposely made it a circle. So we all stand in a circle and, you know, there's no, like, hierarchy in a way. The only, priorities that people get is, like, if you're competing. So if you're competing, then you get a priority on the mat.
hmm
Otherwise, it doesn't matter, like, a black belt can move for a white belt. And I think this is really important too. And I think like, titles, like, some people call me coach or something like that, but that's mostly from, because they want to.
hmm
But for me, I go by my name.
Yeah.
And, I think also kind of being lighthearted as well, we're in this like little cult where a lot of the coaches and professors take themselves way too seriously. They start to preach and, we know what happens when when they take that route. So, I think that's, huge, huge part too.
Yeah.
And showing people, yeah, like, yeah, I have, some more knowledge on this aspect, but it's not that I'm better than you. It's just, you're coming to me to like acquire some skills, and that's about it.
The first week after I got my black belt, there was like one kid who was like, "Professor," I was like, "No, no, no." I was like,
Yeah.
my name's Adam." You know what I mean? Like, don't,
Yeah.
we're not doing that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. Um, all right, so I think that's all the questions I have for you. Just a couple kind of round off questions. What can people expect from you next? Is there anything you're kind of working on that you'd like to share?
Yes, I'm like right now my focus is my students and the team, so we have a lot of tournaments lined up for the end of the year. Like we're doing a little bit more no-gi, so there's no-gi world, no-gi pants. We have a bunch of super fights coming up. A few of my friends and students are opening up some affiliations. So, hopefully by the end of the year, we're close to, almost 10, probably going to be at like 7 or 8.
Wow.
So super excited about that. And, just my goal right now is to spread, honest jujitsu, with none of that BS, you know, just giving people like a good taste of jujitsu without, anything that's going to add stress to their life.
Yeah. Hell yeah. And where can people go to learn more about you?
You can follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is Alex Masterskaya. You can go on the website, masterskaya.com, or email masterskayajujitsu@gmail.com.
Cool. And I'll make sure to put all that stuff in the show notes so that people can just click
Awesome.
and make it easy. Alex, thanks so much for taking the time today. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Adam, appreciate you, brother. Thank you. And good luck with the rest of the podcast. And, hopefully it succeeds. There's no
Yeah.
short-term memory. That's
Thanks, man. Hey all, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure to like, comment, and follow if you're watching on YouTube, and to follow the show on the podcatcher of your choice so that you never miss an episode. It really means a lot. Thanks.